Hey, this is Josh from The Verge, and we're taking a look at Windows 8, the consumer preview on a tablet versus the current market leader, the iPad 2 with iOS 5 on a tablet. So first off, let's just look at basics. Now, Windows 8 uses a lot of, at least in the Metro interface, uses a lot of gestures and interface paradigms that are really different than what the iPad does. Now, the iPad has some pretty basic operation, right? It's got, you can swipe through home screens. You obviously hit the home button, you can go to search or swipe over to get to search when you're at your home screen. If the iPad is turned off, you can hit the home screen to wake it up and unlock it like that. Pretty straightforward. If you jump into an app, for instance, let's say YouTube, it looks something like that. Pretty straightforward. You can double tap on the home button, go over here to the music controls, brightness control, rotation lock control, so on. Very straightforward. You've probably seen it before. And then there's also in this version of in iOS 5, you've got a couple of gestures. So you've got this four-finger pinch to get back to the home screen. If you're in an app, you can use four-finger swipes to go to previous apps or back to the app previous to the previous app. Pretty straightforward. And that's about it for gestures on the iPad. Of course, you've got Notification Center. That's about it for gestures besides in-app stuff like pinch to zoom and the others. On the other hand, Windows 8 is very gesture heavy for lots of different things. So obviously this is your main home screen. You see all your tiles here and apps. You can pinch on this screen to get an overview of your apps. You can also swipe up and get your app menu here. So this is different this is contextual for each app. So for instance, if we're in Calendar, you get a different app menu there. You can swipe down from the top to close an app. There's the Charm menu, which you get from swiping on the right side there. Get these various controls, settings, devices, start, share, search, etc. Just want to show off a little bit of multitasking. You can swipe in apps that you've been using from the left like this, and you can actually place them in the sidebar as we've shown before, like so. And it's pretty handy once you get the hang of it. Go to The Verge. So while we're loading this, that should be loading in the background. And yep, there it is, loaded up, or at least partially loaded up. And it's pretty handy, pretty amazing actually. It's also amazing that nobody has thought of this yet, but it's a little, the implementation's a little tricky, but you get the hang of it. I don't think I've quite gotten the hang of it, but I'm getting there. It's kind of cool because you can actually read your mail while you're working with another app, which is kind of amazing. So as you can see, it's a very gesture-heavy UI, and you're constantly sort of moving from these different sides of the tablet to get around. Obviously you've got the standard stuff where you can just tap to get into something. The iPad obviously handles multitasking differently. You've got the multitasking bar down here, these gestures here, and of course pinch to get back. Not that intuitive, to be honest with you. I mean, 4 fingers is a lot of fingers to use, and frankly it's just it's cumbersome to do it. This is a weird gesture. Maybe you get used to it after a while. I never have. I prefer to multitask the old-fashioned way, but fairly straightforward compared to Windows 8. So if you want to add an account in Mail, you open it up and pull up the app menu, go to Accounts, and then there's a Add Account here. You can, obviously there's a couple of options right off the bat, Hotmail, Google, and Exchange. You put in your data, and away you go. It automatically syncs messages. So you can go through messages here. There's no threaded messaging actually, which is interesting. It's a pretty bare bones application, and you can look at your folders. It's really pretty stripped down as far as mail apps go, but it gets the job done. So you can select multiple messages by swiping on them, like so. Which is fairly intuitive, and then you can delete like that. Now on the iPad, starting a new mail account is fairly similar. Just put in a name here, get option to sync there. Now, what's interesting is that on the Windows tablet, it doesn't really tell you if it's syncing your contacts or not, and I don't know if it is. Oh, it is. Well, this might be from my other account. Hard to say. Nope, it's not. These are just strangers. Complete strangers. Don't know these people. Frankly, I'm a little concerned. Now, let's take a look at the browser. It's Internet Explorer, of course, on the Windows 8 tablet, and it's really quite good, quite fast. And there are a couple of drawbacks, however. For instance, it does not display our opacity correctly on some of our tiles on the site. So that was a little disappointing to find out, but you know, no one's perfect. I mean, up until recently, you couldn't see Typekit fonts on Android, so we shouldn't feel too bad. But you know, I think you can see here both of these devices are just doing a pretty good. They've got a pretty good representation of the site here. Scrolling is really fast and smooth on the Windows 8 tablet. You can double tap and also pinch to zoom, which is super fast. Definitely impressed with the speed of the browser. You also get, it's a little weird. You get your tab menu up here and your URL field down here. It's very stripped down in comparison to something. Well, I mean, even compared to the iPad, it feels a little more stripped down. They're clearly going for minimalism here. In fact, there's some weird stuff that I found where it's tough to save. If you want to save an image, it's not that easy to just grab the image. So there's no real option here to grab this, which I found a little troubling. I was trying to save a desktop image on, of course, on the iPad. It's a little bit easier. So there's some basic functionality that doesn't seem to be here yet, unless I'm just doing something totally wrong. There just does not seem to be a way to select things. So it made it very hard for me to decorate my Windows 8 tablet. But all in all, not a deal breaker or anything. Let's take a look at search. So on the iPad, you can swipe here and start searching for something that wants to search the web and Wikipedia here. You want to grab from the charm bar, you can start searching. Let's do for hello. And it doesn't really make it clear. I believe you can search. Yep, there you go. So it's a little bit less intuitive, but you get a lot more options. You can also go and search the Microsoft Store here, and there are no results for hello. Of course, very disappointing. So less options, really. It's kind of annoying. In fact, I've come up against this, that less options for searching on the iPad. I actually prefer the implementation on Windows 8. So this is the calendar. It's pretty straightforward. Actually, pretty good usable interface for looking at your schedule. Get a few different views. You can see here that Thomas Houston was moving today, except instead he was actually working on Windows 8 stuff. But actually really fast, extremely snappy. You want to pinch to zoom, but you can't pinch to zoom. And that is the calendar. By comparison, you've got the calendar here on the iPad, which is frankly a little less intuitive, and but has a lot more leather in it. So I think that's kind of got something going for it. You can go to the day and create an event here, and you can move them around. On Windows 8, so a little more complicated if you want to quickly change the time of something. You gotta pull one of these guys. So not quite as intuitive. So all in all, very different interfaces. I actually find a lot of stuff in Windows 8 to be more intuitive than what they're doing on the iPad. But the iPad is, of course, much more straightforward, very simplistic, and isn't meant to do double duty as a computer. Now, you kind of forget, but you end up at this screen every once in a while, and this is stuff, I don't even know how this stuff appeared. This is just hanging out in the background. And in all honesty, this is the thing that I want to avoid on a tablet. So I just wish that you could stay in this world instead of having to go back to the desktop environment. I think tablet to tablet, if you just talk about Metro and the iPad, Microsoft is giving Apple some pretty stiff competition. and it'll be interesting to see what kind of form factors, what price points, and what kind of software developers ultimately make for it. But my feeling is that Windows 8 is off to a pretty promising start as a tablet OS.